Welcome everybody. This is Evelyn, and I decided to do something a little bit different today. I was getting a lot of information coming off online about CERN, about the portals right now, July 4th, July 7th, and for me personally, I was also getting a lot about the orange sphere. And so I wanted to get more clarification on all this stuff myself and do a meditation. So that's what I've been doing today. I started out pulling the cards on the table to get me in the right direction and get some initial answers before I went into my meditation. And then at the end of my read, I'll bring you the meditation, the information that I received overall. And it was really good information. So we're going to get going. I'm just going to roll the die, and then we're going to get right into what I was getting from the cards, and then go forward into the meditation information about these things. So it's a beautiful day out today. It is July 4th, so happy July 4th to everybody in the United States. Happy birthday. And it was 442 as we started, which is the 4 of the Emperor and the 42 of the 2 of Cups, of that one-to-one love, that connection. For the twin flames here, we have the 69, which is the Cancer energy, which it is right now on July 4th, which also is the Ace of Pentacles, which is that offer of time, money, and effort, or perhaps a new life. We also have Saturn here, which comes up at the end of this message here. So Saturn's also here regarding restrictions, perhaps the paternal energy, and Capricorn. And then we have 11 here as well, which is the Justice card, which is Libra. It's also alignment, truth, and balance. So Libra, Capricorn, and Cancer. So Cancer and Capricorn is the axis we're working on, the father and mother, the home, and then the balance of Libra, which is really nice balanced energy, and there's a lot of information that comes up around that as well. Something else that I was guided to during this process was also one of the Rothschilds, which will manifest organically as I went through these cards. And so there's, some really interesting information I wasn't expecting to get. So today is the 4th. The day adds up to 17, which is an 8. It's also the Star card, and the 4 is the Emperor, which has to do with control and being in control of other people. So both of those topics come up as well, the stars in the sky, as well as our own sovereignty, really. So at 10:46 to 47, and notice the 47 of today's date, 7-4, which you know I always talk about is my sweet spot from 4 to 7, because in numerology that is the sweet spot. It's just to the left of the middle, just to the higher vibration of the middle. So 5 would be the middle, and then going into 6 and 7 is, airing to the side of the light. Just like in the human body, we air to the side of alkaline as opposed to acidic. So 4 to 7 I always refer to as my sweet spot, and it's 7-4 today, and this was done at 46 to 47 after 10. 10 is the Wheel of Fortune, that high vibe, and actually the Wheel of Fortune was the first card out, but I'm going to show you that as well. So I was asking about CERN specifically, so the collider that's underneath the Alps, July 4th today in 7-7 portals. And I asked for specific information in that order so I would understand and make sure I was reading it correctly. So the first card that came out, which, by the way, this is the underlying energy over here. The first card that came out was the Fortune's Wheel, which literally looks like the collider. Okay, and that's number 23, which is the King of Wands. Luck and right timing with that one there. But the underlying energy here, first, I wanted to show you these 3 cards as well, because these are the underlying energies that I started with. And we have the 47 again of the 4 to 7 sweet spot, and there's the sky bridge of the possibility for union, right? The towers, the pillars, and this energy between them. And there's the sun, which was also a big energy regarding the stars today. And then we have the Moon Maiden of New Beginnings with the 41 reflecting the 14 over here of the Temperance card. This is the Ace of Cups, and this is the Temperance card, which is that higher love. And this is the Moon Maiden. This is like the feminine holding up the weight of the world, but she's underwater, so it's really easy to hold up the weight of the world, but also can be referenced as the moon. And then the Drifter of the masculine while she's holding up the moon, which is that Hercules energy, taking over for Atlas, he's being the drifter, that patient angel of a higher love, experiencing life as it comes. All right, so this is the underlying energy for what came through here. Okay, so the 4 to 7 sky bridge and possibility for union, followed by the moon maiden and the new beginnings, and the drifter experiencing life as it comes. July 4 to 7, the maid of the purple moon, with the 41 of the Ace of Cups, self-love, spiritual love, and new love, in the water, able to hold that weight of the world as the patient angel of a higher love, number 14, experiences life as it comes. So Hercules took over for Atlas, right? Hercules comes up as the feminine, her harvest, and Atlas of the masculine. Hercules, or her harvest, so he can drift towards her, which is so interesting. I'm reading this now because what I just finished with connects to this drifting towards her, because at the end of the read we talk about the Arcturus system is moving towards Earth, and so is its cluster. So first was that Fortune's Wheel, which you saw is very much CERN energy. It looks like CERN. The 23 of the King of Wands, with luck and right timing, like screws turning, putting pressure on the seed here. So here's that second card. Let me pull these both up. Here's that card. So you can see the energy I'm getting this from. It's like screws turning, putting pressure on the seed or the coal. Very green labyrinth that leads to this point. The 57 then of this card, which is separation, is the unmarked trail, the revelation that separation, there's separation and stress on the heart, which may be coming up from the CERN energy if they turn it on tomorrow. I'm being shown the pressure here. In the space contained within are the pieces actually that will clear the way for the twins. The dark's agenda backfires, and this comes up in a different way in my meditation, but basically the same information. Not seeing the chain of events of a positive nature that can come out of this. The greenness of CERN, nature under pressure, is its natural state. They are trying to contain what the twins already are. That two pillars under pressure, containing interference in the space between. Isolating contaminants to transmute their energies. Only that in the space between gets quote-unquote screwed or put under that extreme pressure. And then the 49 card came up of the skywriting and the fates, which is the signs and symbols under the purple moon, or that 0-point field, and the clouds between that, the storm and the release. Getting your wish in relief from the heat is what I wanted to write, because everyone's been complaining about the heat waves, but I wrote the heart. So getting your wish in relief from the heart and the heat, so the heat and the heart. The happiness within self and self-satisfaction. So again, we'll be getting relief. You know, it might be rain, but it may be very much needed in certain places. And then the heart as well, feeling stress on the heart from any energies that might come out from the sun rays coming in the regular energies, coming into the planet every day, and then the CERN energies that may come up as well. So then 27, these three cards came up next. I'm going to show you them in the order they came out. So we have the heart, home, compassion, and then the covenant, the blank sacred contract, all right, which is the 7, and then the hollow bone teachability, which is the 28, which is the twin flames. 7 is the chariot. The 27 is the third flame. It is the Ace of Wands. It's also the reference to 2-7 and 7-2, which is also bringing up another portal between 7-2, which is past, which is why it's reversed, until the 28th of July, being a portal period of 7-28. So 7-2 that passed already to 7-28 coming forward here. So this is the period that we're in. And it's literally, you know, the lead up to the Lion's Gate on 8-8, or around that period, that energy. So what came up around these cards is the heart, home, compassion, the cards I just showed you, the covenant, and the hollowed bone. from 7/2 to 7/28, which was interesting because it's my brother's birthday, and Lionsgate, which is that Leo energy, and I was literally seeing him, so there's this comparison energy they were giving me regarding my brother, but I wasn't sure what that was until later in the meditation. So July 4th brings out that the heart is the home, with compassion across the country, in the sacred covenant, the contract, the unwritten, the chariot of the divine feminine within the masculine, ascending without a plan, the 28, the twins, hollowing one's self to be the instrument for Creator, Source, God, Love, to play, to breathe through. So being that empty vessel for Source to just work its way through. And then at 11:11 a.m., teachability is the perpetual student of life, and the animal too. You may refer to as ego, perhaps. And then at 11:13, inspired to travel with twin could be also coming up here. And then the elk versus the moose came up. They're both from the deer family, but the moose is much larger. It's 6 to 7 feet and up to 1,000 pounds, around there. It's dark brown with a bigger, rounder nose than the elk that's more like 4 to 5 feet tall, or 700 pounds, light brown, and narrow with a more pointy nose. And of course, you know the antlers are different. The elk's antlers are more like the deer, and the moose has those large flat places that the deer doesn't have. As you see, there's very much the moose energy in this card for the twin flames. And keep that in mind, and the heart is the home, and you don't need to prepare. You just show up and you create your life as it comes, right? So what came up regarding this, and that wasn't the only comparison they brought up, the moose and the elk. So first what came up was the moose is, well, in addition, the moose is a stronger swimmer. They like to be around the water, and they like to be alone, which the elk do not. They travel in groups and more on the plains. The elk, the elk doesn't like to be alone. They travel in herds, and the moose is not skittish at all around humans, whereas the elk, may act like deer and run away. The moose tracks, or their hooves, are more heart-shaped, as opposed to the elk, which is more like a tooth of the human, the molar, and the moose with that sharp toe, whereas the round nose, but the elk has the sharp nose, but the rounded hoof, or toe, as they call it, looks like a human molar. The hollow bone card shows the skeleton of the moose as opposed to the elk, as being easier to channel the energy through, and that will come up in a little bit as well. So at 11:25 is the 11 of justice, truth, and balance, the alignment. The 25, remember that number too, because that comes up too, is the Knight of Wands. And then I was just getting, as I look back at the cards, the blue-green energy around CERN, of those two cards of blue and green around the CERN energy of the Wheel of Fortune, as well as Atlas and Hercules pointing, because for me, Atlas and Hercules are the two mountains that people get confused about. Like they consider the Rock of Gibraltar and Atlas the two mountains or the pillars, but that's not what I see. They actually have two mountains. They're not sure which one's actually the Atlas mountain, but for me, those two mountains are both the pillars. The Atlas in Morocco and the Hercules is in the Spanish territory. I forget what it's called. And that referencing the masculine and the feminine mountains. And then the Rock of Gibraltar is the pillar that they point towards, right? The arrow, which points towards the UK, but today is also pointing towards none other than CERN, okay? And so I was getting a connection of the mountains between the Alps, right? Because the CERN is beneath the French-Swiss Alps, and the connection to those Alps to these two mountain ranges. So I'm getting that underground connection of these mountains, and that connection of the arrow of the Rock of Gibraltar, and I brought that up as pointing to the UK because it went to the UK from Africa, and then from the UK we came to America. So they've always brought that energy in as the Rock of Gibraltar and then the Gibraltar Strait, which points towards the United States. So here now they're connecting the mountains of CERN and the Alps to these two mountains in Africa and the Spanish territory in Africa. So then right away, because I've been there before, I got Courmayeur, because Courmayeur is where the three Alps come together, France, Switzerland, and Italy, which is around the same area of CERN. And it was many years ago that I was there, but I was at Courmayeur, so they were guiding me to break down the name Courmayeur, and when I looked it up in Wiktionary, it does not contain Courmayeur. Now, why would they not have a city where the Olympics were held in Wiktionary? That doesn't make any sense at all. So, and I checked on the spelling, and every spelling I saw was the same, and it was not listed in Wiktionary. Don't you find that a little strange? And it's the location where CERN is now. So Courmayeur is COUR, C-O-U-R, which comes up as the 3-month TV broadcasting session, like broken up into the 4 seasons, the 10 to 14 weekly episodes, or cour, C-O-U-R, from French court or Latin courtum, meaning the courtyard, the yard, following, or the heart. And remember following, because that came up as a definition. I think that was Aldebaran's name as well as following, and that comes up later in the read as well. But the heart comes up here. So cour is the heart, and of course in French, que, I'm probably not pronouncing it right, is also the heart. So we have Courmayeur, the heart, and then may, M-A-Y, or just M-A of the ma, and yer, Y-E-U-R, means your, but also if we use may in between cour, may, yer, then we have E-U-R, which means the hour, the fortune, chance, or the omen. And CERN, the actual word CERN, not the acronym, means corner, angle, recess, dish, or receptacle. Swelling on the body, which is the thing that's bad for you, right, that's trying to protect you from yourself. The pressure on your body, like we were just talking about, the pressure on the coal and the pressure on us from the energies coming in. It also means victory and triumph. So again, that was E-U-R, which can reference Europe as well. It also means CERN with an E on the end, which means to sift or discern, to screen and sort. So the CERN is, it's a high energy particle collider, hadron collider. And for me, I know they're working with antimatter because it's very unstable. So of course you need something very powerful and safe underground to deal with antimatter. The base is in Geneva, where it's situated. Of course, above ground, they have headquarters there, but below ground is the collider. The Large Hadron Collider is part of the equipment that's there. It's considered the European Organization for Nuclear Research, but the name is actually French, which is why it's CERN. The different machines down there is Alice, Atlas, LHC, and then lowercase b, and CMS, and then the Large Collider as well as SPS also come up, which the SPS is with Atlas. And the LH, or the Large Collider, is in the center of all these different pieces of equipment. And Alice has come up multiple times in my reads regarding CERN. So the actual name or title is the Council or Council European pour la Recherche, so to look for nuclear, so nuclear in French. So that's the actual title. And of course the symbol looks like 3 6s with a couple other symbols of the 2 rings together. So we went back to the read at this point. And we have that energy of your mother's heart coming from the definition I just got from Courmayeur. Your mother's heart or season or heart may be your hour or omen or fortune or chance, right? Your heart is your destiny, basically. So then as I went back to my cards, I sneezed, and it was 11:54, which is Justice and the Message of the Page of Swords. And the first card I went back to was the Fallen Angel of the 19, which is this card over here. So the Fallen Angel falling from the sky, it's the number 19, which is the Sun in Leo. And it's not the fallen angel, but the falling angel, and spiritual narcolepsy. So basically, sleepwalking or not being able to stay awake and falling back to sleep kind of energy here. The inability to stay awake and falling out of the sky down to the earth. And that can be a fallen star as well that we don't know is coming, but that's just something I'm getting now. Then the 50 of the 10 of Cups, which is that emotional fulfillment, the happy family around the world, and a glowfish fairy, the spirit of the river and movement towards adventure, finding fulfillment and coming back here, perhaps once you leave, right? So these are those 3 cards, the spirit of the river, and I showed you the other one first, and then the vanishing mirror in ego sublimation, and then the eye of the needle, which is 17, and the dreams card of the star. The eye of the needle and your intention, you can see very much. That's the squinting perspective, or the oblique or ellipsis perspective of the circle, which you have right here in the ego. And then you see here is it's like a underworld or fairy type of energy, but also the energy of something glowing that may come, the spirit of the river. So remember those 3 numbers. So then we have the 58, the vanishing mirror that I just showed you, and the ego sublimation, where my pen ran out right there. The pointy pen to the round one, just like the pointy nose and the round nose of the moose and the elk. My pen ran out, and so I had to change to one I had that I don't like the tip as much because it's round and it gets messy. But the ego sublimation has to do with exaltation, of elevation, transforming impulse into something socially constructive, which is alchemy, basically. The transition from the solid phase going directly to the vapor, as opposed to going through the liquid state and not experiencing the liquid or emotional state at all. And again, avoiding the sublime, the sleep, the rest, with the meditation and 5D connection, seeing yourself within as opposed to the ego mirror without. And remember, sublime is a polarity, right? It's that extreme to the nth degree. And if you polarize in the positive degree, then you're creating polarization. So you will have polarization in the negative degree as well. The 17 is the eye of the needle, the pinch or the squeeze, or the intentionality, the squint, the tropical breeze, the dream weaver, the twins able to see from both perspectives, the double eye of the twin flame quantum energy, which is the double-eyed needle. The 2 sides at the same time become the middle, the vortex, the 0 point, the portal, the sweet spot of that 4 to 7, just airing to the side of the light. The window is also coming up as 4 to 9, that it's not completely gone on the 7th, but there may be some residual on the 8th and 9th as well to keep going with your high vibration energy at this time. The heart, or the cœur in French, which is C-O-E-U-R, which is also referencing the core in Cormayer, and then Meyer came up. So M-A-Y-E-U-R, Ivan Meyer came up, or Ivan, however he pronounces it, it's Y-V-A-N. So the Meyer came up, and Mare, because it means mare in Belgium. And then what came up first was a disease, or a condition rather, the Meyer-Rokitansky-Kuster-Hauser syndrome, which is Müllerian agenesis. It's a congenital malformation characterized by a failure of the Müllerian duct to develop, resulting in a missing uterus, and variable degrees of the vaginal hypoplasia and its upper portion. So there's been a lot of talk about what's happening because of 5G and the other thing, the needly things, not necessarily causing lack of being able to have children to the people they're exposed to it, although that can happen, but also talk about their lineage becoming sterile. And here this comes up out of nowhere from Meyer, which I never would have looked up or thought of, and I've never heard of this syndrome. So yeah, Müllerian agenesis, or agenesis, a congenital malformation characterized by a failure of the malarium duct to develop, resulting in missing uterus, and variable degrees of the vaginal wall, I guess, and hyperplasia. Okay, so that was one thing, very important, because they're basically telling us what could happen to our bodies because of what we're exposed to. So then Mayer Rothschild came up from Mayer. And I did look up Ivan, or I don't know if it's how he pronounces it, but Mayer, which is he was the mayor of Brussels from 1313 to 17, but he was forced to resign for stealing from the homeless fund. So again, it's all about the heart being the core, because cœur in French is like C-O-R in Latin, and that is the core. So again, referencing Atlas and Hercules as the masculine and the feminine as well, and the Rock of Gibraltar, and the arrow that's pointing towards CERN. So that's all the energy that was coming up from that page. So I was having trouble finding a Mayer Rothschild, because the initial Mayer Rothschild has passed a long time ago, and even his son has passed. And I couldn't find it. It was the very last mayor I found when I was looking in there. So the sites I went into was liquisearch.com and then algora.com for this information. So I was just looking for the current Mayer Rothschild. And of course, Sir Evelyn de Rothschild came up because my name is Evelyn, so I've noticed his name before. But he's still alive. 1931, he's a banker. He's the personal advisor to QE2. 1989, she actually knighted him for his service in banking. Another one of the names I wrote down was Julius, as we're in July, and I was talking about Julius Caesar in July and August. Julius de Rothschild is still alive as well. He was born in 1981. Also, Countess Magdalene Sophie von Athens came up. She's still alive, born 1927. And then David Wren de Rothschild, chair of the Swiss and CERN, the Swiss-based Rothschild Holdings. David Wren de Rothschild, and holds a position on the governing board of the World Jewish Congress, which is based, and he's actually based in Normandy. So something else about them, I saw the name Mendelssohn right away, and it sparked my interest because I think my grandmother's maiden name was Mendelssohn. And so Peter Mendelssohn came up as related to Nathaniel, the youngest of Jacob's Nathaniel is the youngest of Jacob's Rothschild, and who was branded the puppet master in an article about his trip to Russia and the UK, House of the Lords member, with Peter Mendelssohn, which is the name that was sparking me because it's related to my grandmother. Now my grandmother back then, she had nothing when she came into France. She was, one of the Polish Jews who, were starving in Poland and made her way with her brother to France. And she actually told my mother at one point that she was really proud of herself that she was able to get there without having to sell her body, because I wondered about that. And I asked my mom, and she said, well, she actually told me that. And so they also have twins, Charlotte, Henriette, and then David Lionel, and he's trustee in London. She's a soprano singer, but I wrote down because they were twins. And then I finally got to the last one on the website, in this particular website, I think it was algora.com, David Mayer de Rothschild. So then I looked him up. I'm like, there you go. He's young. His birthday is August 25th. Remember the 25. He's born 1978, which also adds to 25. And he's age 43. And his life lesson number comes up as 58, which is that Four of Swords, the connection in the 5D. So very interesting. So, in my opinion is neither way. I'm giving you the information from the websites that came up. He's an environmentalist. He's son of Evelyn, none other than. He's a British adventurer, ecologist, environmentalist, and head of the sculpture or sculpt the future foundation. He's the youngest heir of the Rothschilds, and he's American mother. And who does that sound like, right? It sounds like Meghan and Harry, right? He was a horse jumper, top ranked when he was young, and then realized that his education was more important. He's educated in political science and information systems, and then 2002 went to College of Naturopath Medicine in London with his ND. In 2001 bought a 1,100-acre farm in New Zealand and was invited to a polar expedition and became an eco-adventurer basically. In 2006, 100 days crossing the Arctic from Russia to Canada, so here's his connection to the Arctic poles. He's one of only 14 people ever to traverse Antarctica, and the fastest team record crossing Greenland Cap. In 2006, launched Mission Control in order to present expeditions and environmental efforts to children and youth. He founded Adventure Ecology organization, community and network for discussion of climate change and associated problems. He invented a new form of sustainable ship at a lab on Pier 31 in San Francisco. It was called Plastiki, and it was made of all plastics. This was March 2010. He launched his catamaran from 12,500 recycled plastic bottles and recyclable technology called Ceratex. Even the glue in the ship was made of cashew and sugar. It's publicized that he refuses to work for the family. I don't know if he's more dark, more light, right? He's got a long beard. He's got that kind of Jesus look, so people think that he's coming up to be the Jesus or the Antichrist, right? So I kind of looked in to see what people were saying about him. So is he literally the Messiah, which if you think he's going to be, well, then you haven't learned anything, right? Because we're supposed to be in our own sovereignty, not looking for the Savior, because that goes into polarity and causes the dark side to come up. So this was coming up from henrymakow.com, M-A-K-O-W, HENRYMAKOW.com. So this guy who's talking about him brings up the World Economic Forum, and the symbol that again looks like there's three circles, and it kind of looks like sixes, again referencing that. But remember that all of the symbols have been distorted and originally had positive meanings as well. So he also showed a picture of him with nearby a canoe with somebody else in the water, where one eye is closed, referencing the one-eyed symbolism of Lucifer, basically. And also then was responding to the fact that he had then done a Hyundai commercial. So if he's so much into green things and renewal of the planet, why is he advertising for Hyundai? And then he's talking about him using 2020 as his launch pad. And his founding papers regarding the sea and when it will end was talked about March 2025. So there's that reference to 25 that's supposed to have a dark reference attached to it. That will be the year that the Savior takes over, but is actually part of the dark agenda and all that kind of blah, 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 which I took into my meditation to get clarity on that for you guys. And because we keep getting energy about 2023, and there's definitely big things coming up in 2023 next year, because I forget what the date was, but there's astrological information in the spring next year regarding the main earthquake lines that will be triggered in California and in the Tennessee area, but they can revert back to where I am in the Philadelphia area. But big earthquakes are supposed to come up or get triggered around that time. And there's also a big shift in August 2023, because that's the 20-year event that keeps coming up from 1943, 63, 83, 2003, now again is expected in August of 2023, the big event. So, and for me, there's always been something about the number 23 that keeps coming up, and I never understood why the 23 was significant to me. And also, October 8th always comes up as a significant date. I never knew why. And I never knew if the 23 was 423 and 823, because I think both of those dates came up significantly for me at some points in my life. So 823 is coming up and 423, but also October 8th for me. So on to the information. The year 2025 seems like a defining or turning point for the New World Order, as has 2020 been so far. And this is coming up from his article. And this is at 101 to 2, referencing the magician, the masculine and the feminine energies. Also, and then I brought you back to the date of birth, as he's talking about the number 25 and 2025 being so significant for the dark agenda. It's also his birthday, 8/25 and 1978, which adds up to 25. His clothing line in 2015, at the bottom of it said established EST 1978, referring to his birth. But now the newest iteration of that, per this article, reads established 2025. He admits to neither being human or reptilian, and perhaps sees himself as Bruce Wayne, but this could be, there's the perspective of the person writing this article. Obviously, he's got a certain perspective about this man. So he did reference an article by John Todd regarding the dark agenda, a defector from the dark agenda who said that the capstone will be placed on the pyramid when the Rothschild becomes the Messiah or the Antichrist. The evil eye in the capstone is supposed to reference Lucifer. And he actually wrote this 6 years before David was even born, in 78, at 110. So that's all that came up from those articles I looked up. So then I went back to my cards, and I was up to the one-eyed needle, which I showed you already right here, of intentionality, and the 17 of the stars and the planets, the constellations, and the dreams coming true, regarding healing yourself as well. So the one-eyed needle in two different cards side by side, because not only is the one-eyed needle coming up regarding that, but right here below it is the eagle. And I've shown you these two cards together as well, because it shows you the round perspective of the sphere and then the oblique perspective, right, of the energy of the I'm just blanking out on the word. I'm sorry. I got hit by a car, for those of you who don't know me, back in 2016, and I'm completely fine regarding that, but it did make my memory even harder to find normal words, which I didn't have before that, even though I had some issues retrieving words because of typical human things like menopause and that kind of thing, which we're not supposed to look at anymore because we don't need to go through those energies, right? You're ageless, we are balanced, we are whole, and just remember that that can be some things that you say to yourself every day to raise your vibration as well. So we have the different perspectives, right? The two-eyed needle, it's not one-eyed like either one of these, but actually the two-eyed is the twin flame push and pull portal, which is the quantum energy. And so when I look back at this card, the one-eyed needle, but in the two different cards and the two different perspectives side by side, at 114, which is the magician, and the 14 of the temperance card, which is the patient angel of that higher love, taking one step at a time, being very patient and slow, dancing the dance back and forth. As the 52 card came up, which is then here with straddling both worlds. All right, so then these three cards came up together. The straddling both worlds, wandering between realms of the Queen of Swords, because that's number 52, and then the joyful muse of inspiration. And remember, music is the muse of the IC, the inner child, the 33 of the Christ or unity consciousness. And remember to stand up for yourself without being triggered. Instead, resonate with music. And then the many masks that we wear of the 38, which is the Queen of Cups, which is the Mary Magdalene energy. So it was like being the feminine in the straddling of the two worlds, and the Queen of Swords being the one of the light, and then the Mary Magdalene energy of the one based in the heart, with many masks to wear, of being the authentic self. And then the music between to transmute the negative energies here, the joyful muse. So you notice there's also two feminine, there's two queens, the Queen of Swords and the Queen of Cups, with Jesus in the middle, the 33, the Christ energy. So the Queen of Swords and unity consciousness, Christ consciousness, or just unity consciousness, along with the Queen of Cups, the Queen of Swords is known as the messenger of truth, or the knight in shining armor can be as well. But the Queen of Cups, also known as the Magdalena, in two worlds, with the divine feminine, or the divine masculine rather, in the center, like I just showed you. And that was at 115 to 16, which is very difficult energy. It's the devil in the tower, which can be really, some harsh energies. That can be like, a sudden dark energy coming in. But it's like the divine feminines and masculines are prepared for this. The Queen of Swords is like bridging the 3 to 4D bridge, as the Queen of Cups is in the 5D and up area, right? So the 5D is basically a launching pad to all the other dimensions. So, and it's also coming up as 52 and then 3338, these three cards, which 3338 has always been a significant number for me in personal relationships, because it's my soul number, but also because 33 is the Christ vibration, the 38 is the Queen of Cups of the Mary Magdalene, and the 52, not only is it the Queen of Swords, the woman of light, but it is the 52 degrees of the 51.84, whatever degrees it is, of the pyramids, and the 51, which is the turning point, where we have enough energy for it to shift into another energy. So the 51 to 52, and by the way, right at that point when I wrote down the 52 degrees, 3338, my lawn guys showed up, making a lot of noise with the lawnmowers in that dark energy, and I had to shut the door and the curtains so that I wouldn't feel their energy coming in. The 51 to the 52 of the JC and Mary Magdalene music, the muse of the inner child, as the falling angel smashes the mirror with his one-eyed intention, as twins maintain their high vibration with their inner children and their outer children as well, and that connection of their children, keeping them in that high vibe, innocent energy. And then at 122, which is the magician and the fool's journey of the 22, with an open heart, taking a leap of faith in magician embodiment, comes up none other than the 25 card, which is supposed to be referencing the dark agenda. So then we have these three cards. So then these three cards came up, the 25 being, of course, the Garden of Venus, totally opposite of the dark agenda, right? Of rest and renewal. The Magician's Sword of confidence in your magic, and the 37, which is the King of Cups and unconditional love. And then the 42 of the Divine Feminine with the net caster. Preparations come to fruition, right? Of the grid and casting the net, catching others when they fall. And the 42 of the Two of Cups, along with the unconditional love of the King of Cups, of coming together, and the inspiration coming from the 25 of the Knight of Wands, or perhaps even the inspiration from being triggered by the dark agenda into your light. So the 25 with the Guardian of Venus, the rest and relaxation, the Knight of Wands using nature as its protection, right? Because nature is natural protection, creating a bridge of flowers for the drifter, or the divine masculine, to enter. So it's like the feminine preparing this beautiful garden for the drifter when he comes to the end of his travels of flowing down the rivers, kind of the last leg of the race, of the unfallen angel. Because you notice what was coming up here is the drifter is falling into the falling angel, but this is the unfallen angel, right? So the two directions of the dark and the light. So we go to the 37 Magician's Sword was coming up as confidence in your magic, in your truth and unconditional love of that 37, and the 42 Two of Cups netcaster they showed you already, with preparations coming to fruition. The 1 and the 2, because 37 is a 1 and the 42 is a 6, but it's also the 2 of Cups. So it's coming up as the 2 as 1, the 1 and the 2 of love, which is the 6, and the King of Cups with the 2 of Cups in that very loving energy, with the Knight of Wands and the purple moon, the inspiration of the Wands energy, and that 0 point energy around them. The 18 is that 0 point, that purple moon energy, and the eye of the eagle, which I showed you already here, in rising above the fray, with your eyes wide open, even if it's only one eye, versus the squinting eye, the sphere versus the ellipse, the oval, the oblique, the condensed, that words are not needed. It's showing you we're going to be using less and less words to explain things as we go into that different way of communicating without words, right? We'll just be able to telepathically connect each other to each other's minds and hearts. We don't have to say the words. We'll just know how we feel. So right now, because most of the planet is still unawakened, yes, we do need our words to explain what's going on. But you'll see as you progress that will become less and less, that words are not needed, and they're referencing that as this circle becoming oblique or condensed, right? The ellipse, the ... is not having to explain. You already know. Words not needed. Does that come up in Jesus Christ Superstar? I don't know. There's something about that that's coming up here. 131 is the magician and the chaos of the Five of Wands, of the chaos of the light coming into the planet, of the energies that the CERN may cook up, but to look at the signs and symbols from a different angle, and angels was coming up here too. The eye of the eagle and the twin flame quantum energy, the two-eyed needle or portal, perhaps one round and one oblique, as different as brown and electric blue, the same and yet different, and yet seen differently. One is the sword, one is the net. The sword with the focused intent of the divine masculine, and I keep writing divine feminine even though I'm meaning divine masculine. Very interesting, so that means the masculine's rising into his feminine. One with the net, the focused intent is the divine masculine, and the catch-all of the divine feminine who's able to see both sides of the situation and being the feminine, the two. The 44 then comes up as the perfect storm separately. These are all individual cards that came up. So, and you see in that perfect storm, it looks like the bird looks like a mixture of like a crow and a peacock. And it's the courage to step into life. And remember, the 44 is the Four of Cups in the Tarot, but in numerology, it's also the Atlas energy, but more of a social worker as opposed to, the weightlifter that the 10 of Wands is. So today, like which one's coming up as which, because then we have the 36 of Lost in Space coming up as the Hercules. She's in the water holding up the planet, which is really easy and light because she's in the water. She's Hercules taking over for Atlas, while he's standing guard over here in the perfect storm, and the 44, which is that pillar, on the ground, watching, being the guard. So needing direction, lost in space, is the feminine energy carrying the weight of the world physically, whereas he's doing now the social work here of the carrying the weight of the world in a social worker sense over here. So the perfect storm and the courage to step into life, grounding, integrating, and mastering of the 44, the receiving of love, as one as the crow and the peacock in the perfect storm, or Atlas standing strong. And this is where then the crow peacock was coming up. Well, is that a crow or is that a raven? And we even have the eagle next to it. Is it part eagle? But I would say not, because it's too dark. There has to be some crow or raven in there, right, to get the peacock to be like that. So I looked up birdfacts.com, the raven versus the crow, and it's exactly the same as the moose versus the elk. The raven is larger and longer. It's 25 inches, by the way, and up to about 2.6 pounds, whereas the crow is only about 6 to 20 inches and, up to 21 ounces. The moose versus the elk. The moose has a thicker, longer bill, and it's more curved. The elk is slimmer and less curved. So it's referencing that same kind of energy, that the raven is like the moose, the crow is like the elk. And yes, the raven's a bit shinier than the crow, but it's also kind of messier than the crow because they have a thicker coat and more disorganized feathers. Their feathers aren't aligned. I think the middle feathers are longer than the others, whereas in the crow, they're all the same length. So those are some of the ways you can tell them apart. But I feel like the two crows that I told you about the other day in my lawn might have been two ravens, because the crows, tend to travel in packs, and the ravens travel by themselves or in pairs. They're loners. So the smallest of ravens can be hard to decipher from the crows because they're about the same size. And they're all very intelligent. It's the same family. They all have these great problem-solving skills. But even more so, the magpie, with excellent mirror self-recognition. The magpie can recognize themselves in the mirror. And all of them are capable of abstract thought, or in other words, imagining what other animals are thinking. They may even hold funerals, a ritual that they display to discover a cause of death, to prevent doing that in the future. And though ravens may be slightly more intelligent, crows seem to be better at recognizing people's faces, or maybe their own faces. And most amazing use for all of them of objects as tools amongst any animal on earth. The crows gift objects to humans, and both are very intelligent. The crow's feathers are more uniform, like I said, and the raven are longer in the mid feathers. The crows look smoother, and they're both oily, but the shininess is more so in the raven. Crows are more gregarious and aggressive. Both are monogamous, but the ravens spend more time as a mated pair, isolated from others. Some crows, like the carrion crow, can be more solitary, but in general they are, pack birds. The ravens prefer isolated environments. The raven's call is deeper and more bassy than the crow, and they do not like each other at all. However, exceptions do occur. In Toronto, after about 3 years of getting to know each other, a raven mated with a crow, and they had 2 fledglings. So there's your twin kind of energy. Ravens rarely are aggressive toward crows at all, but crows are very aggressive to the ravens. So there's your pack mentality versus your individual mentality, which came up for a reason, because it was comparing it to the moose and the elk, but also to what messages were going to come up when I meditated. So the eagle and the raven and the peacock in this bird here, and the Atlas 44 of social work versus the Hercules of the 36, in a physical way being the Atlas and carrying the weight of the world. And a third set of the dolphin and the porpoise were coming up in the same way, because the dolphin has the curvy fin and is more friendly than the porpoise, who's more serious, and more one-to-one kind of energy. And then we had the 36 cards, the 36 card, which I showed you already, of that feminine energy, lost in space and needing direction, as Hercules is holding the weight of the world, or the earth, while Atlas stands guard on the ground with the troops. At 2:02 p.m., which is the High Priestess times 2, or perhaps Judgment and the High Priestess, in the purple moon, the eye of the spoon was coming up in June, which we just passed. But remember the spoon bending and becoming one with it, just like removing the sword from the stone. You can't do it by resistance or pulling. You have to do it by becoming one with it, and then it just becomes jelly, and then it slips right out. Just like when you get frustrated with something and it won't, you can't get something off of something, and then you get mad and pull it, and then as soon as you slow down and be patient, it comes right off. It's that same kind of energy. So at 2:03 is the High Priestess and the Empress, and then the pile of 12 cards came out here, and at the bottom of it is the farther gate with a bold step forward, and you see in this card there are 2 suns, one spraying in from here, and there's one in the background, and there are 2 gates, kind of like an isolation area where one gate has to be closed before the other one opens, kind of like the double eye as well. Okay, 2 suns, 2 gates, and the farther gate, which can be an Irish way of saying father as well. Just remember I said that. And at the top of it is the 45 of the purge, or the grief, and the repairing of the veil, the tying together, back together of the 2 sides of the family, so to speak, in forgiveness. So, and I went through all of these cards too, so I want to give you the message for that. So the 12 cards, and of course 12 is the hanging man in wisdom, in seeing both sides of the situation, and more sides of the situation. At the bottom is the 55 of that Ace of Swords, which is this sword over here. The farther gate, the twin gates and the twin suns, in a bold step forward. And at the top of it, that 45 in repairing the veil for forgiveness. he with the sword in his truth, and the raven separating out from the crows in the twin gate of love and the twin sun of light, the portal and the energy that runs through it, the quantum double gate, underground CERN. Okay, so it's kind of like an artificial sun, right? The divine feminine purging and repairing the veil, weaving back and forth, sewing both worlds together with forgiveness, again being the horse trainer with the horse. No matter what the other side does in a negative or dark way, you show up every day with love and an apple, offering a healthier way in love. And it's always showing up in love, and if they want to fight or not be in love, then there's never anything you need to prepare for. You're either showing up in love or you're walking away, because they can't be that for you at that moment. So we're corseting, and notice the core in corseting, with space between for room to grow, with the energetic exchange of the lay of the land, and ancestral wisdom, with the king of the hill, which is coming up here as Atlas on the ground, as the masculine now here, where the feminine's been in this position as the social worker. And now she's coming up as holding on to the earth and doing the manual labor, while the masculine goes in to do that, social work type of energy and helping other people out on the ground. So the lay of the land is the ancestral wisdom, and of course you get king of the hill. And then the energy of king of the hill, but being Atlas as king of the hill, destined to dive deep into the water from the mountain, into an emotional task or the oceans below, embracing, and notice 10 is the destiny and high vibration, and then diving deep into that emotional task or the oceans below, embracing the falling fool's journey in child's pose. The transmutation of pain by the orange sphere, and there's the 22, which is the fool and the fool's journey of an open heart, in the mindful group think or think tank, as the page of cups is what's coming up there, the innocent heart when you come together with others, allowing yourself to be innocent and vulnerable because you're in front of other people, right? You can't get so cocky because you're amongst a lot of other people with ideas as well, in a place of pure love. Justice and alignment of the deep quiet and meditation, and justice and alignment there as well. It's the purple moon. Meditation and stillness as abundant benefactors. And how do you want to feel? Like these two. The benefactors of grace and generosity in their abundance on earth, with the 3 of Mother Earth, Terra Gaia. The pure feeling of love, peace, and joy. So when you're not feeling where you need to be, you might want to focus on this card, because it always makes me feel better. The 369, and noticing that that was coming up with this next card, because this goes back to looking like the CERN collider again. And it comes up with the 35, which is the wounded warrior, right? The one defending their wounds. But it also looks like a clock, but it also has the 4 corners of the seasons and the world. The lost compass of losing your way, losing your direction, and getting back to your integrity is the wounded warrior in his surrender. But this clock was coming up as, first it was coming up as 11 minutes before the hour, which is 12, but it actually looks like 11 at the top, even though it's supposed to be north. It looks like 11 to 11, the 11:11 of the 11th hour of the wounded warrior surrendering right at the last minute after having lost their way. So, and the orange sphere was in that. And that's been coming up a lot for me lately. So I wanted to find out what that orange sphere was referencing. So we're back. We have the 369 of directions, right, of the clock. 3, 6, 9, and 12 actually. It's coming up as the 6, 6. Where was I at the 6, 6? The 6, 6 came up in one of these things. It's like the golden, the 6, 6 came up because of the grace and generosity. The G and G is like 6 and 6 of the golden gates. And the grace of God, right? And getting back to our integrity by the grace of God. And this support from our benefactors. Okay, the wounded warrior and their surrender. And then finding peace in the Watchers, transpersonal, which was coming up as the 11 before the bewitching hour in the prior card, across the four corners directions, the four seasons, 11 to 11 as well, and the 11th hour. An hour came up as one of the definitions for EUR in Courmayeur, the hour of the heart. Courmayeur is where CERN is underground, needless to say, which I told you earlier, but I can't believe Courmayeur is not in the Wiktionary. Finding peace as the Watchers are here. The Lyran totems, the transpersonal pillars, the ancient desert shamans look to your natives for peace and bliss of the woodwives, the adaptability to painful or difficult situations, the Divine Feminine. The Divine Feminine's ability to withstand pain, right? She's made to be able to bear birth. Becomes the tree. So the tree that the little girl was clinging to the other day in the cards has now become an offshoot of that trunk. Not it, but separate in their sovereignty, but as one as well. The little girl who was touching her touchstone before in the trunk now becomes an offshoot of that trunk in reach. They're still in reach of each other as the Page of Wands in a gathering around. So there's the woodwives of the 64 and the pain that you would endure on the journey and the adaptability that you could do it. They knew you could do it. Maybe the men couldn't because they can't handle as much pain as the female. And the 26 of the gathering round in the power of community and being inspiring, the Page of Wands. And you see all the mushrooms coming up, the lit mushrooms illuminated with the fairies around, and that'll come up again in my messages. And then the final card here was the top, which I showed you, is the farther gate, or the father gate, in a bold move forward. At the top of it being the repairing of the veil and forgiveness, bringing the sides together in the purge for the feminine, where the masculine is here in the farther gate as the pillar on the ground. The crow peacock here. So as the Page of Wands and gathering around, the power of the community and the glowing water species perhaps, so we could have some new species coming in, which we were supposed to be gifted something. A mushroom gift perhaps from the fairy realms and your benefactor, or in other words, source, creator, God, love, and the 55 of the truth, the farther gate, or the father gate, in a bold step forward for humankind, a double gate and a double sun, discerning which, or like a witch, which one's which. Remember, the Father sends rays through his Son, and does the wise one glow? So if you're ever questioning another human and what their intention is, are they glowing or not? Because as you rise in your energy, you'll be able to see auras a lot easier. And if they're not glowing, you might want to note there's an issue there, along with the fact that you may not be feeling good about that person or that thing or whatever it is you're trying to discern. At 225 is the High Priestess and the 25 again of the Knight of Wands. And then I went into my meditation after that to clarify what I had just gotten from the cards. And also I hadn't, at the end of my meditation, I hadn't done the orange sphere in my meditation, but I got ultimate information about that too at the end. So I did my meditation from 2:30 to 2:59, so about half an hour meditation. And what I got was this. So I was asking again about CERN and about the portals and about David Rothschild and what we needed to know, David Mayer Rothschild, and what we needed to know about that. And this is the answer. So first I was getting that as far as the CERN being turned back on or whatever's going on there, I don't know firsthand, but the side effect of CERN is going to be helpful to humanity, actually. And it's our job to stay in our high vibration. And I'm blanking out on Elizabeth's last name. I'm sorry, Elizabeth. But she used to talk about putting a pen or a pencil in your mouth because it forces you to smile, which raises your vibration. So imagine if everybody in the world at the same time put a pencil or pen in their mouth to raise their vibration. How cool would that be? So that's an easy trick to help you to turn that frown upside down, right, so to speak. So don't worry about the effects of CERN. There may be side effects of this that actually may end up being helpful to us. It's our job to stay within in that high vibration, connected to the whole collective as opposed to the outside collective, which is going to be more triggered. The spaceship in my pictures I took in my trip as I was driving from Charleston to Virginia Beach, I just took a picture out my window, and one of the pictures, and I think I showed it to you, kind of caught part of the window, and a spaceship came up in the space between the window and the air. And the pictures were amazing, but that spaceship was coming up in my meditation that I saw, because they were showing me that CERN was balanced by the Federation ships, and the arcs that I've been told are grounding the Federation ships. And again, they can't do anything about CERN unless it affects outside of our atmosphere, which it very well may, and then they have the right to defend or protect themselves. I was getting the lion and the lamb. My brother was coming up in that respect. And that time span between 7/2 and 7/28, which is 26 days, which is half of 52, which is that same energy, because when you are supposed to use 52 centimeters in crystal work and that kind of stuff, often if it's not 52 centimeters or inches that you need, you're allowed to divide it in half or double it. So 26 or the 104 was also working with the 52 regarding that degrees of the pyramids and the King and Queen of Swords. So what also was coming up is the pack mentality, which I brought up a little bit already when that came up, regarding the animal part of us, the ego part of us, that it's better right now to be alone or in pairs, connecting to the whole within. This is why online is so helpful for us to do meditations, because we don't have to physically come together in a pack mentality to come together and yet be sovereign alone as well. And it's not that there aren't groups that come together that aren't all of great light. But the point was, the greater the numbers of coming together, the more likely there's going to be aggression of that pack mentality, because we are humans and we do have that element in us. And there will also be infiltrators of dark energies coming into those groups the more numbers you have. Then the person clinging to the upper tree trunk is what I was seeing. This is someone not, they don't want to let go of the old. And again, reminding you that you're going to be the mic for some of your relatives, perhaps your parents, and speaking perhaps on work that they've already created before they left this world. CERN, so as far as CERN and it's what we need to know, they were telling me when humanity finds it more important to love each other than how the world works or where they came from, because it all has to do with by love, right? So when you find it more important to love each other than needing to know the intellectual pursuit, because the answer is through love. All the answers are through love. So when we're able to find it more important to love each other, and that doesn't mean allowing other people to walk all over us, but it's to unconditionally love, even if you can't be in the same space with someone else, that all of the answers are love. Then things will proceed. Until the Vatican feeds the children with all that money they hoard away and lives as an example as opposed to just words from the mouths, and I'm getting right now, the mouths of babes. Love thy neighbor without giving away your power, but without also being in fear of someone taking your power away or in defense of that, because then you go into fear of losing your power. There's no need to prepare ahead of time. You're always just present, showing up in love, and if someone doesn't want to be in that love, then it's just time to walk away, right? Because they're in fear and you don't want to be in that energy. There's never a question. It's always the same scenario. Can you show up in love, or do you need to walk away because either you or the other person are triggered in fear and you need to not put that on the other person? So it was coming up as 2. The son can love the Father and yet lead a different life. Not to judge a book by its cover. You guys should all know that by now, right? So judging the book by its cover, when we talk about David Rothschild, because his family is dark, we're judging a book by its cover, assuming he's got that DNA and that lineage, that's going to be who he is. But you are a twin. You're the black sheep of your family. Don't judge a book by its cover. And this was on the time that I was listening back to the video, because I videotaped myself doing the meditation to make sure I didn't forget anything. And it was 1441 on the timer, which again is referencing the love and the higher love, the 14 of the Temperance card and the 41 of the Ace of Cups, self-love, spiritual love, and new love. Don't judge a child by their family background. Twins are the black sheeps of the family. Don't forget that. And then I was seeing a butt, and it wasn't a baby's butt. It was more of a man's butt, but it was coming up as the man's butt and the baby's tushy. They were all born asses with hemorrhoids, but with sweet cheeks, or sweet with a bouncy side. 52 degrees and 51% were coming up again, airing to the side of the light. And this is going back to the Lion's Gate energy and the period between 7-2 and 28, kind of leading up to Lion's Gate. Peaking out, keeping your vibration really high is important right now. The 4 to 7, the sweet spot, where the number 5 is the middle, which is coming up as when they're turning CERN on. But you need to air to the side of the light, which is really more the 6th to the 7th to this. So to keep the meditation and that inner sovereignty going, airing to the side of the light. Remember that there's going to be some wobble in the energies, but that's okay. Just keep going within, and we're in that sweet spot, 4 to 7. And they're coming up, they're doing it on the 5, which is the middle. It's not the sweet spot. 5 might be the midpoint, but the light comes in after the 5, the 6 to the 7, to make the difference. And that's an average too, right? So the sweet spot's 4 to 7, because on average that will be above the 5 mark. So CERN is also above our heads. It's out of your control, except to raise your vibration. Meditate, love, stop preparing so much, be in your knowing. Be love or walk away. The raven will not attack the crow's group. The horse and the trainer. We don't fight fire with fire. You're the horse and trainer. The trainer shows up every day with love and an apple, offering something healthier, but if they don't take it, that's okay too. You then show up again tomorrow with love and an apple. Trust. Remember, the negative side are without trust. They expect to not trust others and behave based on that, versus faith of the light, which is complete trust regardless of the other energies in your field, knowing what you know is true without getting knocked off balance. So as far as David Mayer Rothschild and Jesus versus the Antichrist, well, we need to disable the savior and perpetrator system altogether, because this is us judging a book by its cover. It's polarity, which is fine. You're human and you were birthed into polarity, but it needs to be the one in the middle, or the victim, right? Because the savior's on one end and the perpetrator's on the other. They're not going to give up their positions. The savior gets to save people and be all that, and the perpetrator thinks he's all that too. So why would they give up their jobs? It's up to the victim in the middle to make the shift. When you shift and take your power away, saying you don't want to, I just saw the two again. They just flew across the way. Oh my gosh, they're so beautiful. I don't know if they're crows or ravens. They weren't close enough for me to see, but I just saw two fly across, and then a third followed a little bit after them. So remember, if you give your power away by thinking that somebody else is a savior and not you, you're creating polarity, and then you're creating the dark, right? So if there's extreme light, there has to be extreme dark. But if you take your power back in the middle as the victim and no longer be the victim, taking responsibility for all of your energies and not looking for a savior, that's when we make the difference, because then the polarities fade away. We take their power away. They lose their polarity. And remember, do they glow? And if not, maybe that's not energy you want to be around. Anyone who acts like a savior or a perpetrator to hold power over you is not going to save you, because they're going to create the dark polarity. Take your power back. The savior and perpetrator will always exist. Our own example and knowing must be number one. Don't feed into elation or fears. It's not exactly neutral what I was getting, but being in your soul power. Siding with the collective within as opposed to siding with the collective without. Erring to the side of the light within. Your word is always the last word, as is all others. The outside energies can knock you off balance and make you question yourself, okay, which they will do to take your power away from you. So don't allow other people to make you question yourself. And that doesn't mean you can't, question yourself as far as your growth and see things in another way. But as far as putting you into fear, if someone's trying to put you into fear on purpose, why would you want to be around that energy? Unless, of course, you can work it out. So dark is the lack of power. Light is the retention of power, right? Holding your power away from you. So take it back. Be in the middle. Too much light is the savior, which causes the polarity of the dark, and therefore we experience the dark. CERN is the horse, and you are the horse trainer, offering something healthy and then going within, right? Not giving away your power. So that's all we had to say about that. Remember that the ETs may not be polarized like we are, that they have the right to their sovereignty, and so if this affects them outside the planet, of course they have the right to defend themselves and do something about it at that point. If CERN affects them, they have that right. And then I was asking about the orange sphere. And since I hadn't asked about the orange sphere in my meditation, I pulled my Ascension deck. Because I figured I'd get some, there's some planets like the moon and stuff in the deck here. So what came up when I pulled the cards from this deck, the underlying energy was the moon and 11. And you can read that if you'd like, because I'm going to basically read it to you in my notes anyway, so you don't have to. And the two cards that flew right out as soon as I started shuffling was Hilarion, 46, and the Commander Ashtar, which is Ashtar Command. Actually, it's a group, which is which has to do with a position as opposed to a person. But 39 is the Knight of Cups, and 46 is the Six of Cups of the inner children, that sweet love. So when I pulled these cards of the Moon, 11. And look what was below the moon, by the way, because I'm asking about the orange sphere. Well, right below the moon is Archangel Metatron 27, and I'm going to read to you basically what that says. So number 27 also came up, and it also reflects the 7-2. It's the Ace of Wands, the third flame. The Metatron is illuminating your aura, as we've just brought up, with his golden orange light as he works with your stellar gateway chakra. Relax into Metatron's wings as he enfolds you in his wings. Visit Luxor in meditation or your sleep for his guidance. The moon and divine feminine wisdom of the 11 of justice and balance coming up here. So then the two cards that came out was Hilarion, and innocence was coming up there, with the children, that innocent love. And Hilarion, I think somebody else just brought up Hilarion the other day. It was so weird that it came out because I'm not that familiar with Hilarion. So Hilarion is from Saturn on the card, the Temple of Truth over Crete. As master of the, what color? The orange fifth ray of technology, science, truth, and knowledge. He invites you to open your mind so that he can drop seeds of new ideas into your consciousness. He assists those ready to become higher channels and clairvoyance. Okay, so that's Hilarion from Saturn in the portal of Crete. And then Ashtar Command came up, which is associated, when I looked up Ashtar just to look up something, and it's associated with Archangel Michael's energy. So we have Metatron coming up, and then Archangel Michael with Ashtar Command, the 39 of the Knight of Cups, and being love, the intergalactic fleet and spaceships that patrol and protect the universe. The mothership enters Earth through Machu Picchu, which came up recently with my son because he used to call himself Machu because he couldn't say his name. And also there was a reference for this too, because we were talking about the Rothschilds, and my grandmother came up, and we're talking about the family. Not, the son doesn't necessarily have to be reflecting of the family. I can't confirm that for you. I don't know that, but I'm just saying. But then my son, because I always thought my son was my great-grandfather David Lubin reincarnated, because he's got the same scar on his cheek that my great-grandfather had. And now Machu Picchu is coming up, which is the way Matthew says his name. So there's that light and dark energy of coming through, because that's David coming through my father, like David Rothschild would be coming through his father. That doesn't have to necessarily be something different or dark or light. Don't judge a book by its cover. But here the Machu Picchu is also coming up as the two-way interdimensional portal. To visit the planets, the stars, and the galaxies and to see them with cosmic eyes. Breathe in the subtle energy and wisdom of the stellar world and the stellar jays. So the blue jays were coming up as well, but they're not actually blue jays. They're more like in the crow family, the stellar jays. They're beautiful if you haven't seen them, so look them up if you'd like to. But allow it to affect your chakra system and ignite your consciousness. This is a card of expanded enlightenment and a call to intergalactic service. So some of you may be going into more of a channeled type of work. So again, this was Ashtar Command and Hilarion that came up. So Saturn and the galactic mothership basically here that enters Earth through Machu Picchu, and we also had the gate of Crete, the Temple over Crete. So the two gates coming up and the two suns were coming up. So the two gates I just told you, and the two suns were going to be more explained by the orange sphere. So initially when I asked about the sphere, Mars can come up and Ganymede can come up as the orange spheres. But is that the orange sphere they're trying to reference to me? Because they keep telling me it's significant in the cards that it comes up in. So in the SIRIAN Starseed deck, I then pulled energies for the orange moon, and that's when these two guys came up. And you see they're very similar energies and colors of divine justice and alchemy. And you see that this looks like a portal, and this is the core, right? It's like the seed, the pit, right? So keep these energies in mind as I go forward here. And the bottom, I didn't look at the underlying energy for this card, but this is actually the underlying energies. It's that perpetual student, right? The curious page of pentacles, who's always the student of life. And and the underlying energy is me being curious about the orange sphere. It literally looks orange. I wonder if I can see what that looks like is inside of there. I'll have to see if I can look through my loop later and see if I can see what's in that sphere, what it looks like. But there's the orange sphere again, okay? So it came up in all the cards that were pulled. It came up as Metatron's orange, and then Hilarion's the fifth orange ray of technology and science. And then I'm asking about Mars and Ganymede, because they can both come up as the orange sphere. Or is there another moon or another planet that's coming up, or a star? So in Divine Justice and Alchemy, the portal and the core, the gateways to the earth of Luxor and Machu Picchu, and the moon with justice, which also can be just ice. So a planet or place that's just ice, or also the Jew's path was coming up as Jesus Christ. Aldebaran was coming up this week too, which is an orange planet, which also can be referenced as Alpha Tauri because it's the eye of the bull. It's when you're looking up at the sky, they always reference it like to the moon, where the moon is. It's easy to see it from the moon, but it looks like the sun. It's very bright. It's the star in the bull's eye, and it means the follower, the giant red star, but it's really more orangey. It follows the seven sisters across the sky and the three Orion, the brightest stars that actually point at Aldebaran. The two suns are coming up as Aldebaran, and the two gates. So we have Aldebaran, but also another planet came up, could be referenced as a sun as well. But Aldebaran and the two gates of Crete and Machu Picchu. You can see Aldebaran in reference to the moon. And this was coming up under Dark Star Astrology.com, that one of four stars is Aldebaran, which represents Archangel Michael. So that's where that came up from. Aldebaran and Antares, two sides of the same coin, is how they quoted. The right eye and the left eye is Ain, is part of the Hades star cluster. The energy of Aldebaran is the ferocious charmer and your best lover ever. It was coming up, she was referencing JFK and his death regarding his Aldebaran placement, and then Junior as well, because he had Aldebaran in his MC and fell literally from a higher place. So there's that not fallen angel, but the falling angel of JFK Jr. was coming up here. In Hindu, the lunar mansion Rohini, or the red one, as one of 27, so there's that 27 again of the Ace of Wands, the 27 daughters of Daksha, and the wife of God, Chandra, which is the moon, the torch bearer, by ancient Greeks providing light to 7 women giving birth as the Pleiades. The exoplanet Aldebaran is orbited by Aldebaran B, which now they're still debating on whether that actually exists or not. They still don't have absolute proof. But from the proof they thought they had a couple years ago, it's very, very hot. It's not supposed to be inhabitable, with lots of radiation from the sun there, or the star Aldebaran. And this was all coming up from science.howstuffworks.com. But then Arcturus came up in a big orange picture before I went out of that site as the red giant. Oh, there's confirmation. I'm sorry, I can't talk right now. So, sorry about that. That's a good person trying to get back to me, but I'll call them back. So, Arcturus is also known as the red giant, very orangey, which is near the Virgo constellation. It's the 4th brightest star behind Sirius Canopus and the binary star system of Alpha Centauri. And they talked about Arcturus as fusing helium into carbon in its core. But it's going through the process, like Arcturus is past what our sun is as far as the cycles or the phases. So after fusing hydrogen in its core, as our sun is doing now, when the hydrogen is depleted, they now say it's fusing helium into carbon in its core instead. They say that Arcturus is about 7.1 billion years old, whereas the Earth is 4.5 billion years old, or our sun rather, and moving close. And Arcturus they're saying it's actually moving closer and closer to our sun, as well as the Arcturus stream that's also moving in a similar way towards us. So there's literally 2 suns coming up here, Arcturus and Aldebaran, as well as 2 gates, Luxor and Crete, as well as Machu Picchu. Saturn was also coming up because Luxor was coming up as the gate from Saturn. Saturn has 82 moons altogether. A lot of them they haven't really identified yet. But the one that came up here, the first one was Titan, which is a yellowy orange color with a blue haze. It looked more yellow, but they describe it as orange with blue haze, so it's considered Titan. That's the biggest moon of Saturn. But then also Enceladus, I don't know how they pronounce it, but anyway, that's one of the moons. That came up recently, 7721, which 77, we're coming up on 77, and this was last year, 7721. This moon of Saturn has been said to be able to support life, ejecting massive amounts of gas that seems to be of a biological origin. So that was some stuff that was coming up last year on that moon of Saturn. It's spelled Enceladus. But when I looked at the colors of that moon, that was the Borealis. That's not the orange planet, but the Borealis that keeps coming up, because I've been seeing Borealis everything for the past couple weeks. So both of those moons from Saturn are coming into play as well, Titan and Enceladus. So Titan may be the orange moon as well, coming from Crete and that portal from Saturn, whereas the other one was coming from Machu Picchu from Aldebaran, which is orange. So that's the information I got as far as answering those questions. And the not fallen angel, but the falling angel is fine. You're supposed to allow yourself to fall. It's going with the flow, allowing the changes. And that's what we're going. Let me roll the dice for you before I leave. I didn't think it would take an hour and a half to give you this information, but yeah. Okay, so for the twin flames. Did I roll them already? I guess I'm rolling them again. See, I can't remember things. I have 2 of the divine feminine, the polarities, but pain came up with the divine feminine today too, as well as being able to bear more pain because of childbirth. And then we have Libra again with the balance in the middle. And then we have Pluto here too, which is profound changes. Okay, so it's big transformative changes for the world. Whereas Libra is more in the middle, And then the 2 of the Divine Feminine also kind of helping it to err to the side of the light. And number 2, I was just getting 2 in the orders of the planets. So I guess Venus is coming up, because that would be the second planet out from the sun. And Venus was in one of the pictures I took with Aldebaran too. So I have to look up that too as well. That could be coming up. But Libra and balance, taking things one step at a time. You know, erring to the side of the Divine Feminine or the light to stay balanced, going within, and then realizing that there's, you know, perhaps big transformations going on regarding the grand scale of the world and regarding CERN and any energies that may be coming through in the next few days, in the next month. Just as always, stay in that place of love, in your higher vibration. Remember, when you look outward for balance, it may knock you off balance, but if you go inward to the whole collective, there's always that energy of helping you raise your vibration. I hope that was helpful for you guys. It was really enlightening for me. And yeah, rise and be love. Love and light, you guys. I'll see you soon. Have an amazing rest of your July 4th. Bye, guys. See you soon.